I'm Dawn with K-Square Technologies, and welcome to our monthly webinar training series. Today's session is on leveraging the power of Microsoft Teams. Last fall, we offered a training webinar on getting started with Teams. And if you missed that session, let us know because it is available on replay. Today, we're going to go to the next level to look at how you can even do more in Microsoft Teams. As with all of our webinars, I encourage you to be actively involved in our training. And so please share your questions specifically through Q&A. So that's in the Zoom Q&A feature. You're welcome to ask questions throughout the training, and we'll do our best to get back to you should there be anything that maybe doesn't apply to Teams or that we don't have a specific answer for you, but we really want to be able to address it if at all possible throughout the training. And we'll keep the chat for general communications throughout today's training. But thanks for being here. We always appreciate your feedback, and we'll be even asking for that at the end of the session through the use of a survey. Do let us know either through the survey or reach out to the K-Squared team and let us know what you'd like to see for future training topics as well. So take a moment and think about where you are now with Microsoft Teams. It might have been a new program for you in 2020, and now you've had a chance to work with it more extensively. So I'm going to bring up a poll, and if we think about it from a scale of 1 to 10, consider for just a moment. Are you still just getting started with it, eager to learn? Maybe you feel a lot more comfortable with Teams and have some solid team skills, or you could be here helping me deliver this training. You're an aspiring superstar. So let's go ahead and look at where you are right now. So just take a few minutes to answer that poll. Let us know where you might put yourself in terms of your experience with Teams. However, any answer is the correct answer. That just helps us to get a feeling of that. So we'll just give about 10 more seconds on that. Excellent. I'm going to go ahead and close the poll here in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thanks so much for jumping in. And so let's go ahead and look and see where everyone is. It's not surprising that for many of us, we're still at the learning about Microsoft Teams. And that's because there's so many new features that are rolling out every single month. And it's great to know that some of you are also building on your experience. And that's what today's session is that I'm assuming you already are working with Microsoft Teams, but that there can be more that you could do with this amazing tool. So let's go ahead and look at that agenda. And thanks so much for jumping in. And as I mentioned, please feel free to use the chat feature and Q&A to communicate and let us know what's going on. Excellent. So here's where we're heading. We'll explore working with files because Teams becomes a portal for us to be able to share information with other people in our organization and even to edit files. We're also going to look at adding some of the commonly used apps that are available in Teams. And through that means we're often customizing Teams and customizing our channels. The second half of our training will be on getting more out of the meetings tools. There have been a number of new meetings features. It's not surprising with such an increase of people working remotely that the demand and need for more power from Teams has really grown. So that we'll look at the meetings tools that are available to us in Teams. And throughout, then I'll share with you new and improved features. Know that this training could look completely different in 6 months because there are so many new features that continue to be rolled out. But let's go ahead and get started. So we're looking at and working with, here we have a number of different teams that are available in this organization. And let's say that in my planning channel for the Evergreen project team, I want to share a file. And one way to do that is I can go to new conversation and we look for the paper clip. So we're pretty familiar with that one in our other applications like Outlook. And from here, you can see that there's a number of different ways for you to be able to share that. I could upload from my computer. I could look at recently used, and I'll go ahead and upload from my computer. And here I'd like to share then the marketing initiatives file. So now this is going to be part of a conversation that's specifically in this channel. Now to complete that channel, that conversation, I'll use an @mention. And this is something that you may be familiar with. That is, we can do an @ and specifically mention a particular person, do @channel. So in this case, just by starting the word channel, that would be enough for me to be able to reference that. Or I could do an @team, and then that would be for the project team. And this way then anyone who is part of that would be flagged. And so I'm just going to ask them to review this and I can send it on its way. So one of the things that we see, because we did have an @mention, that we see this notification and this icon on the right-hand side as well. But now that becomes part of this channel. And one of the things that we see with that is in our normal tabs at the top of this channel, here we have our posts and we also have our files. Now this will show up, then you can see I just loaded it just a moment ago and it's already then available there. Let's look at another channel that has a little bit more in terms of files, and this is just for another project team. Once again, we can see we don't have to know where it was shared, but we can go to the Files tab and we can see that these are the files that have been shared or made available to that channel. And so this becomes an easy, quick way for you to be able to look at this. You also can see all of the available files by going to your navigation bar at the left-hand side. Sometimes this is called the left rail, but navigation bar is more technical. And we choose Files. So this would then show you the files for the entire organization. And all these documents and changes you make to the documents are automatically saved to SharePoint Online. And so you can work on the documents all at the same time. And you do not have to leave Teams to do that. Let's go back and look at some other things, other options related to working with files. And keep in mind, if you just have some quick questions, then feel free to drop into chat, into the Q&A if you have that, or if there's just something general, feel free to jump into chat. So let's go ahead then and look again here under our design area. And here we have this Excel file. When we want to be able to make additional choices in Teams, you'll hear some different terminology. So you can hear the ellipses, ... and or you can think about more options or more actions. So if we go to the more actions or show actions related to this file, look at all of the different possibilities that we have in working with this particular file. One is that we could simply open it and choose to edit that. That is, I could edit this directly in Teams and actually make changes with it because it's working with my Excel Online application. And so this would be a way for me to view it and also for me to even open it up. We also could go once again to our more actions. We could copy a link to it, download it, and you can explore some of the other options. So just know that this is part of the way that Teams can be kind of your one-stop portal in working with those important projects. One of the things that's also available here is that we could make this into a tab. So consider those important documents that you have, those important files, whether it be a budget, processes and procedures, anything that might be really helpful to be able to share within that particular channel. Across the top, we have our different tabs. So posts, files, and wiki are our standard. Usability priorities, this is a document that's been created as a tab. So I could actually just move to that one and it would then be available to view. Now we don't have to put everything up into a tab because we might lose some of our value for that. But things we want to have quick access to could be made into a tab. And so here's the basic idea once again for that. We'll move to our files. And it could be this Excel file. Here we have a PowerPoint. And I'll simply go to the more options or more actions and make this a tab. And now it is part of that channel. So this becomes part of the customization that you can easily add to your channels. It is just a shortcut. So if at any time you move to that dropdown for that and you decided you didn't need it, now I might rename this just because it's really long, or I may no longer need it at some point, but removing it doesn't take it out, doesn't delete the file, it simply removes the shortcut. So hopefully that gives you some options in terms of working with files. Before we move on, please share any questions you might have in terms of working with the files or what you've seen so far. That is, happy to answer them as we move along. So another way that we can get a lot more power out of Teams is by adding apps. And this is something that's going to be ongoing in terms of how we can really leverage what's available to us in Teams. And this gives us a lot of flexibility. And once again, lets us use Teams as a centralized place to get so much of our work done. So there's popular applications, include those that you may be familiar with, like OneNote. We have Planner, which is now called Task. I'll talk more about that in a moment, and Microsoft Forms. So let's look at some of the ways that we can work with these apps, whether we add them to a channel or otherwise take advantage of them. Here I'll move to my project team here and in planning. And just as we saw with the files, we can also add our applications to our tabs. And let's say that there is a notebook, digital notebook that we have created for this team. And we want to be able to make it available as a great place for maybe meeting notes and for other things related to this project. So I'm simply going to add a tab here. And in this case now, we see many of the different applications. Now, many of these apps are absolutely free. Some of them may be things that require payment, the third party, but you'll see that these are many of the options that are available to you that are just part of Microsoft 365. And with that, what I want to do here is choose OneNote. And whatever might be available here. In this case, this is a demonstration setup for Teams. And so this is actually not going to have content, but you can see the idea that we can access whatever notebooks we might have or other files. And once again, create them and make them easily available. It could be that you are making notes when you're in a meeting, and all of this can be done through Teams. Now, if you're not familiar with OneNote or you'd like to learn more about that, our February webinar is focused on working with OneNote. So look for that invitation. We send those out on a regular basis, and that is where we can explore more about working with Microsoft OneNote. Another application that is frequently used and now used even more within Teams is something that used to be called Planner. Now it's called Task by Planner and To Do. And yes, that's a mouthful. And this is part of the ongoing changes that we see in working with Teams. And so just in chat, will you please share just yes or no if you've worked with the Planner application, just yes or no for that, and just to give me a sense of that, because this is something as well that keeps having new features that you're working with. The name change is one of the things. There's so many different places, if you think about it, where you could have to-do items. We have Outlook task. We have online, we have to-do. We have another option called list. And so this can unfortunately be a little confusing. So the task by Planner and to-do is trying to integrate some of these different things. Here's the way to think about it. And let's go ahead and look at example here. Once again, I'll move to one of my channels. And this one has a lot of different tabs. And in the tabs, and here we have a drop down so that you can see that you can add more things than what might be automatically visible here. And here is a project plan. So think about this task as a task by Planner and to do. And notice that here's one of the things that happens as well, is it will tell you it's been renamed. And so they're still transitioning this. The task portion is your side of it. The task portion is those individual assignments that you might have. And whereas the planner portion of it, or so the task, I'm sorry, the to-do portion of it is yours. The planner portion is more group assignments. So imagine in your organization, if maybe you have an upcoming project and it really involves working with different people and taking on different assignments. Because it's part of the environment, the Microsoft 365 environment, they will talk to the different applications and it can connect to, for instance, Outlook. So it's likely that we will bring this into even another training where we can build this out, but I want to share with you just what this looks like. So in this case, This is really looking at the planner side of things. We have the ability then to see, first of all, what's called a list. And this is then where you can add tasks, and they can then be assigned to different people. And I'll show you what that looks like in a moment. We also then can view this information in what's called a board. Boards are where you can divide them up by, if you will, subgroups. And in those subgroups, then you're able to see what are the different options that are available. And in this case, we have engineering, manufacturing, launch, and there's more. We can even add labels to those to get further refinement. And one of the advantages of the labels is they're searchable. You also can chart out the progress. And so thinking about this as group task, then you're able to see where we are. And it can be helpful sometimes to be able to go to the list to see, well, maybe we've assigned too many tasks to this one person, and how can we distribute the work? Or maybe we have to get a little bit more specific about what those actions might be. So this becomes a mini project management option for you as well. And you can then even look at these from a scheduling perspective. So these are the options that we see when we're working with it from the planner side of things. Now, in this case, let's look at how we might build this from scratch. And I'll move to another channel for this. And I'm going to go ahead and simply basically add that I want to add this. So just to back up here, I clicked on the plus. And just as we could add files, now we're going to add another application. And here is task by planner. And I'll create this as a new one. So this could be for our evergreen planning, whatever we want to call it. This is just the tab name. You could also, once you start building these, you could build off of an existing plan that you have. But in this case, it will we'll be able to create this. And now you can see that you have these buckets or categories that you have that are available to you. So let's go ahead and add a task. And in this case, actually, before I do that, I want to add a new bucket, and I want to call that marketing. There we go. And this is just a to-do one. So I'll go ahead and rename that one and call that project management. So you can see how this already starts to take shape as you're working with it. So in the marketing, I'll go ahead and say order video camera. And I'm going to assign that to Alan. And I would like to get that done by next Monday, and I'll add that task. So you can see how this starts to build out. We'll add a few more tasks. And that might take me a little bit longer. And I'm going to assign it to me. My alias today is Megan. And notice that we have then, and we could assign it to more than one person as well. So there are different options here in terms of building these out. Here again, I can add a task. And I'll add one more. Whoops, I forgot to add that other one. So you can see the general idea in terms of working with these. So excellent. So these are then, this will give you an idea. That'll be something that Alan and I'll both be doing. So now we have then these different tasks, and you can see then that we want to be able to, or that we can start building out these different buckets. Now we can see them as a list. We can see them as a board. And sometimes we see a little bit of a challenge with some of this to get updated here. So I'm not sure why we're having a little bit of an issue there. But the idea here, yep, for some reason, I promise it works really well. So let's go ahead and look at this very quickly here. You can see that there are a lot of different things that we could copy from a task. And I just encourage, since it looks like it is a new tool for you, I'd encourage you maybe just to do maybe a simple practice one. Maybe create a channel in one of your teams that's just for practice, or create a brand new team even for that, and just try some of those. So team is just being a little bit challenging here, but hopefully know that this is actually can be a really effective and helpful tool. Let's just then look at some of these applications that you might have. Let's say it's task. And what we want to do is to be able to get to it quickly. Well, one of the ways that we can do that is that, first of all, we can go to and get those applications and actually make them available in our navigation bar. So here, what I want to do, actually, I'm going to do it from here. You can come into chat applications that are different than or in addition to what's available through Microsoft 365. But here I wanted to have tasks by planner and have that be more from the broader perspective. This is where we see the more the to-do side of things, because these are all the things that have been assigned to me or that I'm responsible for across all the different teams and channels. And if I want to get to this very quickly, then what I'm going to do here is I can right click and pin it. That means that it'll stick on the navigation bar. So this is even easier then in terms of how I can see, notice here, these are my tasks, my to-do items. These are the shared plans that I'm part of. And so you can navigate to those individually. And I can see then what I've got some old tasks. I probably should mark those as to do, huh? So here we have different tasks that are assigned to me, and you can even see a progress report. How are they labeled? Whether or not something has been completed. And you can work with them in that way, and you can even get more detail by moving to those. One of the other things that's nice, if you have an application that is pinned, you also could right click on it. And that's the key, is it needs to be pinned. I could pop out the app so I could actually have it in a separate Teams window. And it's especially helpful if you're working with multiple monitors. So my to-do list can be in a separate Teams window. I know that these are integrating as well in our online version of Office. And these tasks also talk to Outlook. So this becomes another way to manage your individual task as well as those group tasks. And hopefully that gives you some ideas about how the task by planner and to do, that's kind of a mouthful. And notice that, know that ultimately this is just going to be called task. It's just that this is part of the transition as it's being moved over. So that's a little bit, that's another application. We're going to look at a few more applications and then move into our meetings tools so that you can really see more about what's possible in Teams. So another option for us is to work with polls. Now, polls are things that polls can be either just part of our communication within a channel, but we can also create polls within or for a meeting. Here are some examples that you can see here, and these polls are created with Microsoft Forms. So Forms is yet another application. And you can see here that there was a previous very important survey or form that was filled out. And in fact, I'm going to have one of my colleagues that is going to look at this, and she has voted and really likes ice cream and really likes cupcakes. So in this case, notice what happens when she completes this, that we will submit the vote, and hopefully very quickly those will update. There we go. So now we've seen some updates. So these are right now, if you set up a poll, it isn't something you can delete. That's probably going to change. That's here again, but it is something that you can create easily for forms. So it could be a quick way for you to be able to communicate with your team as to how you getting updates and other information that might not require a meeting. Here's how this works. Let's go ahead and move to just another channel here. I'll start a new conversation. And in this new conversation, I'm moving to the ... And the ... remember, is like more actions. And here is forms. Now there's a third-party one called Poly as well, but I'll stick here with forms. And Microsoft Forms can be a standalone application, but we're seeing that specifically in Teams. And for this, just to keep it simple, I'll ask and we'll go ahead. Notice that we could have multiple answers. That's what we had with that essential dessert question there. And we could have other options. Once I have this, then notice keep response anonymous. You can decide whether or not that would be something helpful. You can continue adding other options, but for this, we'll go ahead and save it. And I can preview it here. But at this point, I'll go ahead and send it. So now when I send it, that means it becomes part of that channel. And once again, I'll go ahead and in this case, I'm going to reference the entire team Atmention. Okay. And so now this particular, by doing an Atmention, that will add notifications. And so that means other people will see that. And so one of my team members has seen that particular poll, and she's now voted. So now we're seeing that. And I, as the one who created it, I could also vote. So that is then another application that is working with Form to be able to pull that. And once again, So here, let's say this was a really important poll. Hover over it, look for the ... and I could even pin this in the channel. So that means everyone who comes into that channel would see it. You'll see an icon for it, and it could be on, and it could also be unpinned at some point as well. So polls can be created before and during a meeting as well, not just within the channels, but that becomes another option. Let's wrap up with just one more app, and certainly, as you might have seen or guessed, there are many more, but another app that's really helpful for you to know about is Stream. Stream, as in river, water running. It's an app which makes it easy to create and publish video content. But the biggest use of Stream is for recording your meetings. So let's go ahead and look at this. And here you can see that when we, let's see, oh, there we go, whoops. So here we have a recent meeting, and apparently we got things done very quickly. But when we have the meeting, if we have a recording, then what will happen is that the recording will show up in the chat for that meeting. If you've set up the meeting so that it takes place in a particular channel, then you will see it there as well. And so this recording is created and can be managed through an app called Stream. And here we also, so I could run it right now, or I could come in here and into the more options and open in Microsoft Stream. Now let me show you what Microsoft Stream looks like very briefly, and then we'll switch gears for our meetings. And perhaps there we go. Sometimes, there we go. So this is what Stream looks like. Here you can see all your available videos. And what's cool is that you also can search for the transcript. So a transcript is created, which is a way for you to be able to move to a particular point if you're searching for a particular topic. And it does a pretty good job of capturing the terminology. So consider that as well as another possibility in working with your applications in Teams. Now we're going to shift to and look at the new and handy features which are available when you're working with meetings in Teams. I would certainly want to give you some time to that. But in chat, would you please share what you've seen so far that's helpful? Maybe an app that you'll start using, or something that, you know, was a new option you didn't know was available. I'm guessing the task with Planner is a new one that perhaps is handy. So just in chat, just jump in and let us know what you've seen so far that might be helpful for you or that you'll start exploring in Teams. Yeah, the task, I think the task is going to definitely be, and feel free to change your chat as well so that it comes into all panelists and attendees, because you know that I'm seeing that planning is a good one. The apps in this are all new to you. Excellent. So you can explore those. That is, explore the ones that are also just built in, that come in as part of Teams in Microsoft 365. Planner and the assignment of task. Thank you. Yeah, I think it's really helpful. That's one of the reasons why we have this, just to give you an overview of what's possible. There may be certain applications that are more important to you, but to know that you can do that without needing to buy any more programs, and they're just part of your environment and they all know how to work together. So excellent. So tasks definitely helpful there, and I appreciate your feedback on that, and thanks for being here and jumping in. So let's then finish our time together here by exploring our meetings, something that you're probably using Teams for frequently. And with that, then, we have a lot of things that have been added that are new or have been improved. Here we have a meeting that apparently I'm running late for, but I'm going to go ahead and simply come in and view the meeting details. I'm the organizer for that. And it has been scheduled. It's set up to take place in that channel. Once you have created a meeting, then look for something called meeting options. So this might change, but at this point, the meeting options are available to you once you've created the meeting and invited people to it. And the meeting options then are, we'll say, relatively integrated. Like I said, I think that we'll see some of these things be easier. But one of the things that you can control that, and you might have noticed is sometimes can be a challenge, is who's able to just jump in and join. That is, can people just jump in, or do they have to sit in the lobby? Who can bypass the lobby? Well, maybe it's just you. Maybe it's everyone. You can change that so that you aren't surprised that maybe the meeting has already been started by someone who already just went in early. Do you want to announce when someone comes in and out? Who can present? That is does everyone have that? And it just depends upon your organization. Maybe you only want it to be you, and then you can change someone to the presenter if you'd like. Or you could have it set for specific people. This is how you can set someone as, let's say, a panelist. And I'll change this to only me. Will you let attendees unmute? Now, if it was something that you had set up that maybe is going out to the public, maybe that wouldn't be an option. And it's something, certainly in education, this is one of the challenges sometimes is how can we lock this down as necessary for that specific meeting? So explore these meeting options. And with that, then, those are things that can be modified before the meeting starts. We also have some options that what we're going to go ahead and do is actually join or start this meeting. And we'll see some more choices here. And this is one of the things that is also relatively new. It is, you may have noticed it if you've worked with Teams recently. It is what would be called, this is the join screen. So this has been improved a lot. There's a lot of things we can set up ahead of time so that we don't have to do it all once we're in the meeting. That is, confirming our computer audio, for instance. Now, I'm going to go ahead and mute this just so that we don't have any feedback from that. But maybe you want to come in a different way. Maybe you want to change what you're using for that. Here I could turn on my camera, see how that looks. And, do I want to make changes to how this is coming in? And this is where we can do our virtual backgrounds. So we can set up our background filters ahead of time. As you might be familiar with, we can blur. So if we simply just want to mask out, and even without a green screen, it actually works really well. Or we could pick from some of the preset backgrounds that are available. And you probably use these, but one of the nice things about it now is that we can pick this before we join the meeting. And if you haven't already explored, in addition to the ones that are here, some of them are a little bit more fantasy, you can also add new backgrounds. Maybe you have a background you created in PowerPoint that has your company logo in the background. Or you've probably noticed you can download a lot of different backgrounds. They're usually packaged as Zoom backgrounds, but some of those are different options as well. So you have these different choices as you are working with the meeting or as you want to work with that. And then when you're ready, once you've set those, then you can join. So that's a really nice feature, is that you can set all these things ahead of time before you come into the meeting. Now I'm going to come into now I'm in my meeting and I'm waiting for other people. Just to make this a little bit easier here, I'm going to go ahead and turn off the camera. But I want you to also pay attention to that is, although now my meeting toolbar also used to be at the bottom, now it's up at the top. We can have some handy keyboard shortcuts here too. So you have Control-Shift-O for the camera, Control-Shift-M to mute. And so I'll go ahead and turn this off. I'm going to wait for someone else to join me. And now I've got my colleague Lydia is now part of this. To see my participants, I can show the participants here. And our meeting toolbar has some other features as well. Now I just want to pause here and just check in. I'm not seeing any questions coming in, so hopefully that means that we're addressing anything that would be helpful for you. But anything specifically about meetings or that you're seeing that you're curious about, I've got some other new and nifty features to share with you, but I just want to make sure that we're addressing that. So please feel free to go, if it's something specific, go into Q&A. If you just see something you like, if you're just so enthusiastic, like this is amazing, feel free to put that into chat. So at this particular point, by opening up the participants, I am able to see then, and I'll go ahead and just make this bigger just so you can see that option. I'm able to see who's here. I can see the other people who were invited, but apparently they didn't respond. And so by hovering over them, I could kind of prompt them like, hey, I know you're really busy, but I could, send that like, please come on. And, I could call him and see if he would respond. I could also invite someone else. So I could come in and invite someone else as well, if that maybe didn't get the original invitation. And then I could also copy the link and put that into an email, so that even if the meeting is already running, I could share that. Now, the other thing, and by opening up the participants here, we have the ... This is where you can then change some of your options in terms of what we saw earlier in the meeting options. So if you didn't change them before, then you would be able to decide whether or not you let the attendees unmute. The other option here too is that you could download an attendance list. Now you have to do this before you end the meeting, but it is something that might be helpful for you to know who attended and just to be able to track that information. So that becomes another possibility for you as well. But lots of the meeting tools have become much more robust, and we will expect to see more things available as well. What's also available here, if we look at our more actions, our ... This is a great place for you to review, maybe even just set up a quick practice meeting so that you can evaluate this. Here's your device settings. If you have multiple monitors, multiple microphones or sources, it's really helpful for you to be able to check that out. So here I have, different microphones are possible, and then people might say, well, I can't hear you, and that's because the microphone isn't set to the right one. How are you listening to? What are your speaker options? You can see I have lots of possibilities. And so even though I may have thought that I was coming in correctly, then this is a way to check those things, and you can even test them. And if your microphone isn't muted, for instance, you would be able to test it this way as well. So check out those device settings when you're first coming into a meeting as well. Additionally, here are those meeting options we talked about before. So you're able to change them even when you're in the meeting, not just before the meeting. You can have meeting notes. You can see the meeting details. So here's, once again, we can copy the join information. Definitely worth exploring how this would be helpful for you. Now, there's a couple things to also just mention here. Because this is a very small meeting, I can't demonstrate it to you fully here, but before I do anything else, I'll talk about the gallery here, but let's go ahead and start recording. Notice as well here, I could change my background effects. If I didn't do that before, that's my virtual background. So I'm going to start recording. Remember, the recording is going to take place in stream. Usually just takes a few moments. It is a good practice to let people know that this is being recorded. And then you will see this in the upper left-hand corner, not only the timeline on the meeting, but also that it's being recorded. Now, here's a tip I want to mention here as we're getting close to wrapping up. If you are the organizer, or if you started the recording, when the meeting's over, make sure you don't just hit leave, because the recording is going to keep going. And it also means that people could still be hanging out in the meeting. Always make sure you go to the drop down here and say end meeting. So that's I've made that mistake before, and then I had to go back into the meeting to end it because the recording was still going on. And so that's that's a good best practice. It may be helpful for you to review this training and create kind of a checklist. What are some of the things I want to make sure that I do before a meeting? What are some of the things I want to remember? What do I want to set up for my meeting options? How do I want to handle the settings? And then even just this helpful thing here to make sure that you end the meeting if you set up the recording. But at any point, you can go to your more actions and you could stop the recording as well. Let's look at a couple other possibilities here in our meetings. We are currently in the gallery view. And with that, then it simply will show then the different people that are part of that. If you have more, now the large gallery, you may have heard about this. This is a 7x7. So right now the gallery view would be as many as 9 people. The large gallery is a 7x7 preview. That is up to 49 people. The key there is it can't just be 49 people. It has to be at least 9 people with video turned on. Otherwise, it will not allow that as an option. The together mode, you've probably seen some promos on that. The together mode changes it from people being just in little boxes or circles, and they will be placed in things like an auditorium or a classroom, with a sense that it creates more connection because it looks like you're sitting next to that person. One of the things that's a new feature is the together mode now also has different scenes. So it has small office scenes, like people sitting around a conference table. And it also has different scenes where even people can be outdoors. So that is something that here again, you'd have to test. Just depends if you have a large enough organization, it might be something that you can test out and look at those different scenes. So that's another consideration as well. A few other things that might be helpful for you to know about your meetings as we get close to wrapping up here. And that is if we have our participants open, one of the things that's available is we could go to the more options or the ... and we could spotlight. And so if you are the primary speaker or someone else is, then you could spotlight them. And what will happen, it won't be really apparent here, is that the person, the spotlight here, and I'll go ahead and just turn on my video for just a moment so you can see. And it's still, okay, I'll just turn that off. We've got it when we're running in multiple levels. But notice here that it has some icons for the spotlight. And what will happen is the participants will see that person full screen. And then at any point I can move to them and exit the spotlight. But that is a way to make that a little bit easier for that speaker to stand out whether or not they're sharing their screen. Another piece that's available as well in our options here is that we can turn on live captions. Now that means, that when we're talking, and you can see it down at the bottom, it will capture our words, and it does a pretty good job. And this is something that can be helpful if there's a lot of background noise, or perhaps someone is a little bit more difficult to understand. That is, we can turn on the live captions as another tool that can be easier for the participants to be able to jump in and be able to really participate in the meeting, or to be able to get value from the meeting. And that is another relatively new feature, and hopefully you find that to be valuable too. Another choice for us, another option, and even though it shouldn't work anymore here, I'm going to turn off the live captions here. Let's look at a couple quick things related to screen sharing, and then we will wrap up. And that is, if I want to share my screen, then one thing is, if you are running video or running anything that would have audio, make sure that you say include computer sound. Another option is also, if you are switching between multiple screens, make sure it's screen one, or that you have versus a specific window. That is, if you're switching between different applications, for instance, or different browser windows. And here is another application that we have. And this is one that can be really fun for brainstorming and for other options. I will very briefly jump into this one, just based upon our timing here. But this is, so if you wanted to have people brainstorm, you could actually, if you're pretty good about writing with your mouse, or you have a stylus, but you can also add text. And so you could use this to capture ideas from people. You can even have little Post-it notes. And all of these are things that you can move around and that you can edit. But it might be something that you would find helpful for certain kinds of meeting formats. One last piece here is that although it's not really something that I can show you really effectively, a new feature in Teams is breakout rooms. Now, I only have one other attendee here, but breakout rooms gives you the ability to set up networking options. It gives you the ability to be able to let people move into specific rooms. And so you can decide how many rooms you want, and you can create the rooms. Keeping in mind, I don't have a lot of people here. And I could then start the rooms, which would then send people off to their rooms. Now, once I do that, because I'm the host, I'm not going into one of the rooms. But then at any point then, now we want to be really clear about what our assignment is for that and so on. And we'll go ahead. I think it's just about setting it up. And then at some point I could say, I'm going to go ahead and close the rooms. But that is something you might also want to try out with your team. When you get to the, when your meeting is getting to 5 minutes, which is probably something should have popped up in about 5 minutes ago for me. When your meeting gets to about 5 minutes before the end, you might have seen this, you get a 5-minute warning. So that is another new feature. And we expect to see more as well. I hope this is giving you a great idea of what's possible in Microsoft Teams. That is to just know more options for apps, for files, and for many of the new features. Would you please just take a few moments and jump into chat and share with the panelists and the attendees here, what have you seen that you'll start to be able to apply? What are some new features for you? Know as well that this recording is available to you so that you can always go back and review some of those features. But if you would please share that in chat, that would be really helpful for me to know what was valuable to you and what you can take advantage of. Also look for as well, we have regular emails to let you know about our upcoming webinar options, and Microsoft OneNote is in February. And Excel pivot tables we will cover in March. So excellent, I'm seeing some good feedback here. Task, some of the new options in the video, being able to work with the apps, being able to pin. So pinning those apps, pinning files, some of those possibilities. Excellent. When you see the survey, please do let us know what would be of interest to you in the future. Thanks for the feedback. I appreciate that. And yeah, definitely explore that task for planner and to do. I think that's going to be an interesting one that's going to continue evolving and offering even more valuable to us. So I appreciate the feedback from everyone. And thanks so most importantly for being here and joining us. That is our look at Microsoft Teams and how you can get more power from it. The link to the video should be sent out to the participants then once it's made available. So in the next couple of days for that. And we'll contact K-Squared about the getting access to the getting started for that. And so I'm just going to, Katie, you'll see Tammy Hess is asking about access to that video. So if you would make that available to her. And I thank everyone for joining us. I look forward to seeing you. I'm going to hang on. Excellent. Thanks so much for joining us. I look forward to seeing you next in February for OneNote and in March for Excel pivot tables. Until then, let us know how we can help you to be more productive. Reach out to us for your IT services and consulting to support you with your Microsoft technologies. Thanks so much for joining us. Look forward to seeing you again.